It is now 23 minutes before 8 o'clock. During the Vietnam War, of course, some of the major battlefields were right at home on college campuses across America. And with war against Iraq possible, we thought it would be a good idea to check in with three current student leaders to see how President Bush's Persian Gulf policy is playing on campuses today. And so joining us first is Adam Ross, an associate editor of the student newspaper at UCLA in Los Angeles. Mr. Ross, good morning. Good to have you with us.
Good morning.
You're the newspaper man. They're supposed to have a sense of what things are like on their campus. If there was a referendum today on the UCLA campus, do you think President Bush would get a majority of support?
You know, I think he'd get a majority of support in terms of being the president and doing a difficult job, but I don't know if he'd get a majority of support after some people came home dead. That might be a different story.
Adam, have you sensed a change in the way people have approached this, or has there been increasing attention as the deadline is drawn closer?
Well, at first, the people in September who were putting on the rallies and stuff were kind of the activists who you'd expect to be rallying for peace and stuff like that. But as it's approached, it's really the more conservative general student body who's realizing that it might just be them. And I think they're starting to show up at rallies that you normally wouldn't find them at. And that's making an impact. You
mentioned a moment ago that if there were a referendum, you thought there'd be a majority of support for the president because he's president, etc. Yeah. Would those who support him be willing to go?
I would say very few, and I mean, I hate to say this, but it seems like we've kind of been raised in an age where Dan Quayle is our war hero, and there's not really the ethic of laying your own body on the line. If you could push a button and they'd all die, it might be a good idea, but actually having to go over there and bayonet some people, I don't know if students have the stomach for that in this decade.
Is there a discussion of the draft, a possibility of a reimposition of the draft?
People are talking about it, and they want to know how to get out of it, and they're starting to realize that they can't. And I'm actually hearing people talk about going to Canada or Mexico, and I didn't think that it was that desperate for some people, but it seems to be that way.
As it stands now, how does this rate with other problems in terms of attention on the campus? Has it gotten people's full attention?
Well, aside from rising fees, this is it. There doesn't seem to be more of an issue, certainly in terms of the letters we get at the Daily Bruin, which is our newspaper. This is the #1 letter receiver of all issues.
Adam Ross, thank you. Good to talk to you this morning. Joining us also from Atlanta is Rodney Floyd. He is the student government president at Morehouse College. Rodney, good to see you this morning. Nice to have you with us. Let me ask you that same question. If there were a referendum today on the Morehouse campus, would the president have the majority of support?
Right now, I'd have to say that most of the students, no, he wouldn't, because most of the students would like to see that, see sanctions be giving a greater length of time to work. A lot of students are apprehensive about going to war in the Middle East or something that some people are not totally clear of what we're fighting for.
Is there much activism in relation to this issue on the campus?
Yes, you're starting to see quite a bit of activism right now. Tonight, there are marches that are taking place in the city of Atlanta. They're being spearheaded by colleges across the city of Atlanta, and some people from across the state are also joining in. And it's not exactly the radicals that are doing that anymore. It's a wide range of students across the campus.
Morehouse is, of course, a predominantly black college. Is there any difference, do you think, in the reaction there because of that?
I don't know. I think that students across America are concerned with what's going on. A lot of students on our campus are also concerned that January 15th was chosen as the deadline for Iraq to get out of Kuwait.
Why do you point to January 15th?
January 15th is the birthday of Martin Luther King Jr., Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who was a peacemaker. And to tie in a war issue to the birthday of a peacemaker is something a lot of students are really upset about.
There's an irony in that. How do the students talk about the possibility of war?
A lot of students are concerned about what's going on. A lot of students, they're willing to fight for, to die for, to go to jail for what they believe in, but a lot of students just simply don't believe in this war yet. They believe there are some other alternatives to bring about a peaceful solution to the situation in the Middle East.
All right, Rodney Floyd, thank you for being with us this morning. And joining us from Washington is Robin Templeton. She is a junior on leave from Oberlin College. She's a student organizer for a national educational organization. Robin, nice to have you with us. I was interested in both Adam and Rodney talking about the views of the war being somewhat in flux. How do you see the views changing?
I think that there's been a gradual inclination for students to be very resistant to this war. The resistance is rising daily, and today as we approach the January 15th deadline, I see that students and youth across the nation are really up in arms in resistance against the drive towards war.
Why? Because there's obviously, as Adam mentioned, there's a strong body of support for the president. Why do you think that the view is moving in that direction? Because we're getting closer to the deadline? Because it's getting students' attention? Why?
Right. I'd say yes. I'd say that students are both angry and incredulous. The ones that are angry are blatantly resistant to the war, but the ones that are incredulous just aren't really buying President Bush's excuses or justifications for the need to go to war. They just really don't see it as necessary.
But in the last 15 years, we have heard about a trend of conservatism, growing conservatism on campuses.
That's true. As we've come out of the Reagan era, there certainly has been a conservative element on campuses. However, students have been pretty hard hit by the economic recession, and they don't see Reagan and Bush as having the answers to our problems, both domestically and abroad. So there is a conservative element on campus. In fact, on some campuses I've heard of students for war groups. However, these are in very small percentages, and I'd say the vast number of students are, again, resistant to the drive towards war.
All right, Robin Templeton, thank you for being with us this morning. Rodney Floyd from Morehouse and Adam Ross from UCLA. Appreciate all three of you being with us this morning.